I'd just like to say this council meeting is being recorded in accordance with council's webcasting of council's meetings policy. The recording will be archived and made available for viewing at any time on council's YouTube channel for a maximum period of 12 months. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, if you're in attendance in the public gallery, you should be aware that your presence may be recorded. Your continued attendance means that you agree to being recorded and also that you will abide by the council's adopted code of meeting practice. The chairperson or general manager having the discretion to interrupt the recording of any meeting at any time should it be deemed necessary. This may occur in the circumstances where commentary is considered to be misleading, defamatory or inappropriate to be published, or where behaviour breaches council's adopted code of meeting practice.
Thank you, General Manager. Now the meeting will commence, and could I have all those who are able to please stand for the prayer and the acknowledgement. Almighty God, give wisdom to those in authority and guide all peoples in the way of righteousness and peace, so that we may share with the justice the resources of the earth, work together in trust and seek the common good. Amen. I would like to acknowledge that the meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal people in this land. Thank you. General Manager, is there any apologies?
Mr. Mayor, there are no apologies.
Moved Councillor North, Councillor Christians. Carried. We'll go to the minutes. Item number 5, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Bathurst Regional Council, the 5th of February 2020. I have a mover and a second, please. Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? Put the motion. Carried. Number 6, declaration of interest. General Manager, do we have any declaration of interest?
Mr. Mayor, I have one declaration of interest from Councillor Fry in the Director of Corporate Services and Finance's confidential report number 1.
Councillor Jennings and Councillor Rudge. Put the motion. Carried. Item number 8, receive and deal with General Managers and Directors report. Councils, we now go to the General Managers and Directors report. Number 1, Section 415 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Could I please have a mover and a second? Councillor Morse, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? If no discussion, I'll put the motion. Carried. The General Report, item number 2. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? No discussion. I put the motion. Carried. Item number 3, LED street lighting deployment. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rudge, Councillor North. Any discussion? Councillor Christian.
Yeah, I just want to say how good this is. Basically, went for a drive last night through the CBD and it's lit up like daytime. So it's fantastic. It's great that it's going to cost the ratepayer less. And all less CO2 emissions and all that sort of stuff that keeps some people happy. But certainly they brighten the place up and it just looks fantastic. So it's a project well worth it.
Thank you, Councillor Christians. Any other discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Carried. Now go to Director of Corporate Services and Finance report. Item number 1, statement of investments. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rudge, Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? No discussion. I put the motion. Carried. Item number 2, the monthly review 2019-2020 delivery plan and operational plan 2019 to 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Morse, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Carried. Item number 3, sundry section 356 donations, Bathurst Memorial Entertainment Centre community use subsidy and Mount Panorama fee subsidy. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rudge, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor North.
Just something for in the future. Could we possibly ask on this report that there's one other line item besides the 356, BMAC and Mount Pan, but whatever the year coming up, next year's budget, any ones that we do approve that we're going to take out of next year, could we have as part of this report showing what has already been allocated for next year?
Thank you, Councillor North. Is there any other discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Carried. Item number 4, the power of attorney. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orban, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Carried. Item number 5, request for financial assistance to Bathurst Hand Weavers and Spring Guild. Councillor Morse, Councillor Rudge.
Mr Mayor, if I may put an alternative recommendation here. That A, that Council provide financial assistance to the 2020 fibre muster with funding obtained from Council's social implementation plan allocation.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jennings. Well, Rudge will do. Okay. Yeah, you can speak.
The first muster that was held in Bathurst was in 2015. And it was a great success. It was held up at Stanley School. It attracted very large crowds. It was held over a period of 2 days. It was a huge success. And this one planned for 2020 is also scheduled to be a great success. There will be something in the order of 100 exhibitors, and they come to Bathurst for at least 3 nights. They come with families, they come with assistants to set up their displays. So you've got 300 people, 300 bed nights. The number of people visiting the actual fibre muster over the period of 2 days, and a lot of them stay overnight, although they do come in buses for the day, is something in the order of 1,000 people. This is a huge exhibition of the work of natural fibres. It sounds as fibre muster is a bit misleading, but it's the craft, the art of these people who make wonderful things out of natural fibres. So I really believe that Council should support this. I know that Council will continue to promote these events through the Visitor Information Centre. But I think it's really important that we acknowledge that this is a very significant event for Bathurst, for the creative industries and the arts and crafts people of Bathurst. Thank you.
Councillor Morse, Councillor Rudge.
Thank you, Mayor. I find this very, very difficult to say no to. This is the Bathurst Hand Weavers and Spinners Guild, and we need to support our local community groups. Last week we gave $5,000 away combined to the Peugeot and Holden events, and another $3,036 to Newtons at the Mount. We really need to start looking after our own community groups here. They do bring in visitors, they do bring in the tourism dollar, and I really, really find it very hard, or finding it very hard to say no to this under the circumstances that we support other groups outside of Bathurst.
Thank you, Councillor Rudge. Is there anyone else? Councillor Christian?
Yeah, I appreciate what my fellow councillors are saying. However, I've got to say I've never heard of the fibre muster before myself. $1,000 towards venue rental of Bathurst Panthers. I'm pretty sure this group could probably approach Panthers management and maybe strike a deal there. You know, if they're going to bring a bunch of people into Panthers, they're probably buying drinks, lunch, dinner, whatever. I'm sure if they spoke to Panthers, they could potentially get their own deal there. Towards publicity, $1,000, I think possibly. You know, if it brings people into the city. I think that's fantastic. It's good for the local economy. But $3,000 of cold hard cash, it may as well be a council-run program. This, but yeah, I'll be happy to pay $1,000 for publicity. But anything else, yeah, I just don't see how it's worth it.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Jennings.
I just add my voice to Councillor Morse and Councillor Rudge. There's no doubt that this local Bathurst community group deserves support. 700 people in attendance at previous events is an excellent draw card for Bathurst and the knock-on effect for that. And I'd also like to think that there might be some opportunity maybe for Bathurst Council to get some sponsorship branding woven into the event through this kind of funding. I think that's more than fair enough in this case, and we do it in other cases. So if that's an opportunity, if this motion goes ahead as it's been amended, that'd be good.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Any other discussion? Councillor Hanger.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question? $1,000 towards incidentals. Please explain.
I might get Councillor Morse to explain that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There will be workshops, and it's not clear at this stage how much the workshop tutors will charge. Incidentals, yes, does sound as though you're buying a lot of bits and pieces, but there's a very structured format to these events. And yes, for the tutors, for the materials that people use for the workshops, it's not possible at this stage to say exactly what they will need, but the incidentals will cover a lot of the workshop materials.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry that Councillor Christian hasn't heard of this before, but then I don't think that Councillor Christian, with all due respect, has much to do with the arts and crafts community. We as a council do support a lot of the arts and crafts activities. Evans Arts Council is greatly supported by council, which it appreciates very much. As far as Panthers is concerned, I hear, and I don't know as fact this, but I hear that Panthers has been very generous with what it's offering this group. They're offering reduction on the rental of the space. They're offering free tea and coffee. They really are getting behind this event. It is a significant event, as much as a significant event of looking at cars that are polished up. And I think you really have got to say that cars and the art and the skill that's within these people for the fibre muster, they take years to learn it, and they're prepared to work and share their skills. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We now go to Director Engineering Services Report. Proposed compulsory acquisition for easement rights, lot 701 in DP 1057340, Upwell Street, Bathurst. Councillor, I have a mover and a second. Councillor Orban, Councillor Rudge. Is there any discussion? Being no discussion, I put the motion. Carried. Item number 2, preventative maintenance works to programs and leisure pools at Manning Aquatic Centre, Bathurst. Could I please, Councillor Rudge, Councillor Jennings, any discussion? No discussion, I put the motion. Carried. Item number 3, water security update. Could I please have a move in a second? Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? Councillor Rudge.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was reading through this report. Thank you, Director of Engineering Services. I was reading in regard to the state government around the appropriate agency supplying, installing and telemetering meters for all irrigators upstream of the water filtration plant. Now, from what I can gather from this, we've asked the NRAR to fully check the irrigators' logbooks and to provide advice back to council on the irrigators' compliance with the gazetted 20% allocation, which was made on the 1st of November 2019. From what I'm reading here, you haven't had that feedback. And you're also moving forward saying council will need to advise the state government no later than May this year, 2020, when decisions on water allocation for the 2021 period will be made, as to what, if any, allocation should be set by the state government for the irrigators above the water filtration plant. Now, from what I can gather from this information is that we need this information gathered so we know what to report back of what allocation we feel needs to be made. Would I be correct in saying that, Director?
Through Mr Mayor, certainly whilst we don't consider that the irrigators are doing the wrong thing, we have asked the details as to consumption so we can calibrate that with our own consumption models moving forward. Look, the start of the water year, which coincides with the financial year this year, so 1 July 2019, when the 100% allocation was provided by the state government, council wasn't consulted as part of that decision, which is why the report indicates that we would like to put our case to the state government as to what we feel might be an appropriate allocation for the next 12 months.
Thank you. And I also understand from reading on further here, with the situation that the council finds itself currently in, it was hoped that the state government's Water Supply Critical Needs Act 2019, with us getting on that list, would assist council in reducing the significant time frame and extent of approvals that would normally be the case for infrastructure approvals. Now, from what I can understand, Bathurst Regional Council have been ticking all those boxes, but we're still waiting on finding out about whether we're on the critical needs list from the state government.
To Mr Mayor, I'll answer that. And I think we need to put a number of things around that to understand where we're at with the water situation. Yes, we are waiting to still get on the critical list. We had a meeting, myself and the director, as recently as today. The state government has appointed a gateway team, which is various government departments, DPIE, water, fisheries, environmental sections. And so we've had a discussion on that, and we presented more details, although we have been providing details since November on those requirements. My understanding is we should get an update on the position from the gateway team by Friday this week, which I'll convey back to the councillors. And that may be to say, yes, that we've been listed, or that they require some additional information. I think, though, that needs to be looked at in the basis of what has been happening since last year. And in that time, you're quite right with respect to the irrigators. We have requested meters, and we're waiting for a response on that. We also, as a council, proactively sought a variation to the irrigators permit, and that was a 20% allocation in November. And that certainly has made a significant difference to water flows, particularly with the positive attitude of the irrigators in complying with those requirements. The other couple of areas was Wimbendale Pipeline, where the council has completed the feasibility study, and it cost around $50,000. Then there's two paths on that. One is to get the new pipeline in from Wimbendale Dam to access more water for the council. The other one is utilising the existing pipeline. The new pipeline would allow us to attract more water because we could pressurise it. Out of the current pipeline, we could access around 3 megalitres a day. Currently, the city is using 11 megalitres a day, so that gives you 20 to 25% of the water consumption. In terms of utilising the existing pipework, the existing water information, I have signed, and we have implemented a detailed design for that for the works that are required at the water filtration plant, because clearly if the Wimbendale water comes in, we have to do some form of treatment. That detailed design is $175,000 tender. What we're hoping is that with the flow through on that, because most of the works will occur on the actual water filtration plant site, including building of a fourth pond next to the 3 ponds that are already there, if you know when you go down Waterworks Lane, councillors, that will allow water to be stored. We've got a target date to access that 3 megalitres a day in May of this year. So the council's done that with the councillor's direction. In terms of the new pipeline, I've signed the contract for the design of a new pipeline, which would go from the dam to Limekilns Road and then link up with the existing pipeline, which can take the pressure. That's a contract of around $200,000. A number of these have been signed under the power that you gave me last year as councillors to speed up the process. In terms of those projects, we're also particularly working with the Public Works Department. They're looking at advice to us, but also assisting us in reviewing the potential tender prices to give an idea of the validity, because we're not going through the full Section 55 tender process. The next item, last year we asked about Oberon Dam and access to water that's held there. That was refused last year because of the issues with the Sydney Basin and the need for water going back into Katoomba. Given that the rains have now got I understand the dam's up over the 80% level in Sydney, we have again made further approaches to get that idea reviewed again. The next item that we've done is Riparian Flows. Councillors will be aware that there must be a release of up to 4.35 megalitres a day, depending on inflows. We have undertaken an environmental assessment of that. Ability to reduce. That assessment has been in, and in January we've applied for a reduction of that riparian flow to 1 megalitre a day. We're waiting for a response. Part of the reason for making that application is that during winter, if the Fish River system operates as it has, including the last 4 years, we tend to draw our water out of the Fish River. By reducing the riparian flow that would be required would allow us to keep water in the dam that wouldn't be released. And so you're looking at 2 to 3 megalitres a day that would be stored in the dam. Again, they represent about 20 to 25% of our water usage under level 4 restrictions. In terms of the stormwater harvesting program, we've already undertaken the water quality assessment. That cost around $20,000 to see whether the water, what the quality was, what potentially may be needed. We've also undertaken the feasibility study last year on that. That was around $50,000. Those reports said that the stormwater harvesting was feasible, and so then councillors gave us the direction to keep going ahead with that. In December, I signed, subject to the approvals of council in the delegations you gave me, a request for contractors to do detailed design of that proposal. That's a $600,000 tender. And that will include things such as environmental, cultural, fauna, flora studies, European heritage assessment where required, cultural assessments where required. Also look at the power, electrical design that's in there. On top of that, we also commissioned advice to legal and contract advice so that we could develop a contract once that's done, ready to sign straight away. So to speed the process up, and through that we've been utilising the Public Works Department and also having early contractor involvement. Now, in terms of the stormwater harvesting, and the engineer has spoken to you about the amount that would make available to us, and certainly would be at least up around the 25% mark of our level of water that we would require. The first alignment we looked at, which was in particular along the river, at this stage we're not going with the first alignment, given that there were issues with respect to that route that led to changes, and that ranged everywhere from practicality through to environmental and cultural issues. The second alignment has been finalised, and at the moment I have authorised the getting, and they won't be very far away within the next week or two, to get the finalised costings and designs occurring for that second alignment. Now, part of that second alignment will probably look at a couple of stages. One will be to get the pipeline through to the waterworks and operate just directly through and put in a water, what do you call them, package? A pre-packaged cleaning system, which will then allow us to use the water. And then the second part of that will then be getting the approvals for the ponds that we're talking about going in the area behind McKillop and the hospital, whereabouts we would put in the ponds to then draw out. The idea behind the having the package there to deliver the water works well, but having the ponds will allow us to store a fair bit of water, anywhere up to about 20 days worth of storage, which means that you're not running out of the system. So I suppose it's a long answer to your question about where we're going, but I think it's important to know that a number of processes have been put in place, that the council certainly has been stepping up to it. We have been talking with the government departments, and certainly I know the mayor in particular has been talking to the to the local member. If needs be, the local member will have us in next week talking to the minister again to try and accelerate the process. At the same stage, in the background, we continue to advocate for the Regis Pipeline project. Now, that's not the Regis Pipeline that was proposed several years ago where they would take our effluent. This is the Regis Pipeline that Regis is looking at running from Lithgow to the gold mine there at Kings Plains, and we continue to advocate for that because if the government got on board with that, there is a large supply of water available out of that, which would then give opportunities for towns like ourselves to get on the back of it. We also continue to follow up on the Wyangler Dam upgrade project, and in April 2020 the representatives of that Wyangler Dam project from the government will be coming and addressing the council as a working party.
Thank you, General Manager. Yes.
I'd just like to say that, so I think the residents of Bathurst, the community can feel rest assured that the department is doing everything that it can in this space, and I understand you're working very hard, Director, to try and get things working for us. So thank you for all of that information.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Any other discussion? Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is our water situation of being at around about 30%, as everybody knows, has been a very long, slow burn over many months and indeed a couple of years, really. 2 winters without recharge essentially is what's killed us. I'm really impressed, and I think the residents of Bathurst and the Irrigators need to be congratulated, as they have been several times already, but doesn't hurt to say it again, in terms of expressing that reduction in water demand that has occurred. And I'm just wondering, can we estimate roughly, just an approximation, since level 3 and level 4 water restrictions have come into place, would you say in terms of percentage points in the dam that would have saved between 10 to 15%?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, well, the average daily consumption at level 3 over summertime, this time last year, was around about 25 megalitres per day. Now our current consumption is close to 11 to 12. So going from level 3 to level 4, the majority of the pain has been felt by the residents, in part council by reducing the water on its own facilities, but the majority of that has been by residents' action. So it would have been a substantial change, and certainly that has been increased in terms of the level of the dam by increasing those restrictions earlier than what we ought to under the recommendations of the original drought management plan.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Councillor Morse.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, the General Manager, for clarifying the question about Regis mining water. I was a bit concerned that Regis was trying to get hold of our water again, and thinking of the Macquarie marshes. But one thing that I think that we must be very careful about at the moment, and I know councillors have been driving around, we're looking very green, and people are actually mowing grass. And I think we've got to be very, very careful that people don't get complacent. I know in other places, immediately it rains, they say, oh, we're fine, we don't need to go for water restrictions. Somehow or other, we need to put that message out that, yes, we're green. I drove out to Perthville, which I know Councillor North goes to quite often, and it looks green and lovely, but it is not the end of the drought. And I think we need to make that very clear, that we still need to undertake all this because we're not out of the woods yet. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the General Manager or the Director of Engineering. The compressed approvals process, and would that the gateway team, would they help us with agencies such as Fisheries of Water, OEH, State Rail, or Traffic New South Wales? Does that help us with approvals from those guys?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is the intention of the Critical Infrastructure Act. It's to, you don't not do your various environmental studies that are required, but it compresses the time to process them through. And definitely a number of those representatives in the discussions today would have input, and the director certainly raised it, issues as varied as going under railway lines through to cultural heritage assessments through to the Biodiversity Act, and fisheries were in on the meeting as well. So yes, the idea is that it would compress those timelines by working with them under the critical infrastructure, and those people today we spoke to would be expected to help.
With the things you outlined, Mr. General Manager, I don't think we can do much more than that. I mean, it's an incredible amount of work we're doing, and again, fast tracking it. But the possible release from Fish River Dam, that would be the simplest, cheapest, and quickest option. But we would still be doing all the things you mentioned. Is that correct?
Yes, we would continue to do all the things we're doing. Is it the cheapest option? The amount of water that we would probably seek to purchase would cost us around $4 million, but would probably add around 6 months to our water supply. The idea is it comes down a pipeline to, what's the location? To Rydal, and then from the river down there. But it certainly is one option. I mean, obviously, that's a question that's got to be decided by the state government through Water New South Wales, because they will continue to consider their obligations to communities in the Western Blue Mountains precinct and that area.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Orban.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just on that subject quickly, on the water coming in from over on into the Rydal River or whatever to come to us, what guarantee have we got that it's not going to get sucked out on the way if we purchased it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, should that approval come through, a further request for a Section 324 restriction on irrigation would be requested.
Excellent. This is my taking a critical look at this, but as the General Manager just alluded to, the work that has been going on by this council, and I give great credit to the engineering department for what is being put in place to get this community, keep us in water, is just above and beyond. And from my take on it, we haven't been put on that critical list because we're doing such a good job that we're so far ahead of everybody else that they're just saying, well, you guys can wait. I mean, I don't say that off the top of my head, but I mean, you've got to look at examples like the money that got thrown at Tamworth and you know, how they went down to, what, 1% or something of water in the dam out there, and all of a sudden, all the money appeared and you know, job's done. So it's there's a hell of a lot of red tape that should not be having to be dealt with in these situations. But and as Councillor Morse alluded to, we really have to keep the ante up on water usage, because Sydney is now going off water restrictions or release, you know, softening their water restrictions because their dam's gone up over 80%. We're getting a bit of rain happening, a few rain events and quite heavy ones in town, but obviously nothing out where it should be going. So we've really got to keep people on notice that they do have to keep doing what they're doing, and people are generally doing a really good job. And congratulations to the council for what we are doing.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Christian.
Yeah, just basically back up what other councillors have been saying. Council staff here have bent over backwards working on these water solutions for the last 6 months or so. Plans, designs, costings, the whole lot, and not just one or two plans, but backup plans as well. And it seems very frustrating to me, just to back up what Councillor Orban said, Bathurst is being punished for good water management. We seem to have a bureaucratic body in Sydney that are dragging their heels on an issue that could affect us quite significantly down the line. Now, I'm one of these people that believes that it will rain and, you know, we'll save the day. But if it doesn't, there's always a question of if, and if we reach day zero, can this New South Wales government say that they have done their best for the citizenry or ratepayers of Bathurst? We seem to be going to meeting after meeting after meeting, and we're not getting very far. I understand there was a meeting today, and hopefully we find out there's a good result on Friday. But what if there's not a good result on Friday? I understand there were probably 6 different bureaucratic bodies in this meeting. It's red tape. We're frozen by bureaucratic nonsense. It's hard to get any sort of progression. I mean, don't get me started on the go-kart track or the second racetrack. We're being crippled by bureaucratic nonsense. Okay, we're doing all the work here, so I don't understand why we're not being rewarded for it. It's basically the tick of a box, and we go along the way. We asked for $20 million, and we got 10, or 14, I believe, but predominantly 10 for 5 for the Wimbledale Dam, another 5 for the Stormwater Harvesting project. But now we're having a look at having to dig up our roads and all this sort of stuff, which is going to cost the ratepayer even more money. I just want to know why the bureaucrats seem to have so much control over what happens. Our local member, Paul Toole, I understand he's very frustrated, and I feel quite sorry for him because he's doing his best, but the bureaucrats are just dragging their heels. I mean, to change a light bulb in a New South Wales government facility takes 6 groups and 4 months of reports. It's just absolutely ridiculous, and I think it's to the detriment of the people that live here in Bathurst. Water is our most critical issue. Okay, we've got the fisheries carrying on, we've got other groups carrying on. We need to tick and flick and get these projects happening. I understand the Wimbledale Dam project can be accomplished by May. I understand that if we actually get the tick of approval, which is a miracle by the bureaucrats in Sydney, we can have the Stormwater Harvesting project done in about 6 months. But I just don't understand why it's taking so long. Other towns, as other councils have said, are getting a lot of money and a lot of support. But it seems like because we're ahead of the curve and we're doing the right things, don't have to worry about Bathurst. I don't know if it's because they see us as a safe seat. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm getting really, really irritated with the lack of action from the bureaucrats in Sydney. Mr. Mayor, I understand that you may have a meeting with Minister Pavey maybe next week. But I really hope that we outline that we're very, very frustrated and it's simply not good enough because we've been left out in the cold. We're doing all the hard work and not getting anywhere, and it's incredibly frustrating. I have one question. How much will the Wimbledale pipeline and the stormwater harvesting program for what we call Plan B, how much will those combined programs cost at a guess? And how much will a taxpayer pay as opposed to the New South Wales government? Director of Engineering.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the original estimates that we had for both of those projects were $10 million each. We obviously have had some hurdles to overcome in terms of alternate designs. Those costings haven't come through yet, but I certainly anticipate that that cost will be higher. At this stage, $10 million has been provided by the state government, and the remaining funding we have requested of the state government, but we have not received a written confirmation that it will be available.
Thank you for that. What do we have to do to get on this critical needs list? Again, Director of Engineering.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as the General Manager indicated, we've had a meeting today with the water group or the Gateway group. Our case was put strongly to that group as to the reasons why we should be on that. We're anticipating a positive answer on Friday, and should that not occur, we'll take further steps as required.
Thank you for your answer. And if we don't have a good outcome on Friday, I'd suggest us councillors need to go on the warpath, because this is a serious issue. We can't just sit back and do nothing because we're, put on a shelf. We need to make some serious noise and get these projects up and running. It's that simple.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor North, would you like to close if you like? Councillor Hanger? Councillor North?
I've got something written here for the what if factor, because you can't knock, and that's one of the proudest things. I've been in this council for a long time, is our staff and what this council does, and the councillors have always been very vocal in getting things done. And a lady tonight said, what have we done in the past? Well, we have looked at the grey water, and we have looked at a pipeline from a dam, and we have done studies and that. So there's documents there that have helped us into our situation now. Land that we purchased years ago after battles for another purpose puts us in a good situation. But to me, it's a what if factor. I don't think we can do anything more than what our staff have done. But what if we get to that stage and we don't have the right answer? I don't understand why the right answer hasn't come in 3 months. The critical list was put about in 2019 for a reason, to make sure that this red tape is looked after. Not just because I'm a Bathurst boy in that. Bathurst region, being parochial to this region, is that we are a very critical region in New South Wales and Australia for what we are as a city, our history, what we are moving forward, Mount Panorama. We tick a lot of boxes. But, you know, the what if factor to me is something we hit impact of level 6, you know, and I just said Mount Panorama. The potential, if we shut down Mount Panorama and all the events, the impact could be that figure we went to Tamworth and Broken Hill. It could be $500 million or more. I hate to think. A lady spoke tonight about impacts and the flow-on effect. There's always going to be more flow-on effects. So what if the state government simply now, and I guess the word I use, I'm frustrated, because I can't see why we're not on that list. I can't see why, when I talk about Broken Hill, Tamworth, Dubbo isn't on the list, but I think they got 40 or 50 million. But one of the things that I can see, and I'll stand corrected here, and I said on the radio this morning, I'll stand corrected, but I believe those cities and towns are part of state water and government authorities who look after the water. We're not. Why can they jump through hurdles quicker than us? Councillor Orban is right, another councillor said, we have done the work. We have put on staff. We have simply worked night and day, and credit where credit's due. But you know what, this council always does it, and so does the councillors here. But the what if factor is, if we don't start getting answers, and Councillor Christian is right, you know, with respect, Mr Mayor, we're all going to have to be jumping up and down. I know you're jumping up and down, and it's nothing we're picking on Paul Toole or anything like that. Is we need you to be extremely vocal. We need Paul to be extremely vocal. And I know it's not really a federal issue as such, but our federal member needs to get very vocal, because this is a damn important region. This council's done a lot of work. Even before we even started the restrictions way back 18 months, 2 years ago, we were talking about putting restrictions on prior to that. This council's looked at it, and we take very considered approaches to everything we do. But the time is up. We are time poor. You can basically say now we have got a 10 to 15 million hole in the budget coming up for 2021. Because that is the only way we're going to get this through. Because I know everyone here as councillors, we want those 2 projects to go ahead, and we want to keep doing all the work on the other projects. So you can guarantee right now, unless they come on Friday and say you're on the critical list, great, that's a bit of red tape. But we still haven't, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we still haven't been given a surety that we'll get that extra 10 or 15 million. It may be in this year's budget coming from the state government. I do not understand, and it's extremely bloody frustrating why they can't say it is in next year's budget. The fact that when they gave us that 10 million, it was for 2 projects. So we have to do the 2 and we're committed to it. Give us the other 10 to 15 million dollars. Simple as that. So our Director of Corporate Service and Finance, I know he's doing the work, and he's going to fill in that $15 million budget, because that's probably what it's going to be. I'm sorry, the state government needs to actually step in. And as I said, if I'm wrong about what I said with these other ones that got major money, the way I understand it, they're state authority run water supply. Isn't it great how they get the money and we don't? Councillor Orban is so right. This council is so damn proactive. We've spoken to our residents, and I look at every day, I probably go past at least 5 big irrigators, and they have massively cut down. To one guy, I haven't seen his the big irrigators working. You know what extra time?
Extension of time. Thank you, Councillor Christian.
There's one I have not even seen his big irrigators on. There's the other where it was about 6 different paddocks where he had a product, and there's only 1 paddock that's going. So all of our irrigators, all of our residents have done the right thing. Council's done the right thing. The councillors have done the right thing. If they've got any contacts, they're doing anything right. I'm sorry, it's time for our bigger cousin to step up and give us some money. And Councillor Christian is right. If we don't get an answer on Friday, we probably all should start having a chat, and we should be pushing, because we're time poor now. These projects have got to go ahead, and every councillor here is going to say, go ahead, we've got to complete them. But that's a 15 million hole in our budget. So congratulations to the staff, the councillors for all the good work, and the residents, irrigators. The state government, it's time to come to play. They really do.
Thank you, Councillor North. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We now go to Director of Cultural and Community Services Report, number 1, 2019-2020 Bathurst CCTV Funding Program, Round 2. Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Item number 12, report of other committees. Councils may now go to the report of other committees. Policy Committee report, the 5th of February 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Morse. Is there any discussion? No discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those for? Against? Carried. We go to the Traffic Committee report, the 4th of February 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Carried. Item number 13, resolved into confidential committee of a whole to deal with confidential report. Councillors, could I please have a motion to go into confidential meeting of council? Councillor North, Councillor Christians. Is there any members of the public and press who wish to make representation to the council as to whether the matter should or should not be dealt with in confidential committee? As there is no representation, now I put the motion to go into confidential committee. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you to the members of the public for your attendance tonight.
Mr Mayor, the council has just met in confidential session to consider 4 items. From the first item concerning properties at Wellington Street, Peel, the council has been recommended that council approves the sale of Lot 9 and Lot 11 in DP 758833, known as Wellington Street, Peel, as detailed in the report. The second item was for the sale of land known as 28 Lou Avenue, Eglinton, and the council has been recommended that council approves the sale of Lot 14 DP 122661, known as 28 Lou Avenue, Eglinton, as detailed in the report. A third item concerning 9 Mikel Street, Bathurst, that council approves the sale of Lot 25 DP 214037, known as 9 Mikel Street, Bathurst, as detailed in the report. And the fourth item concerning a commercial sublease of the Bathurst Rail Museum Cafe, and that the recommendation is that council approves entering into a new commercial sublease agreement for part lot 301 in DP 1194865, located at 126 Havana Street, Bathurst, known as the Railway Refreshment Room Cafe at the Bathurst Rail Museum site, as detailed in the report.
Thank you, General Manager. Now, councillors, we now need to adopt the items of the Committee of the Whole, the confidential session. Could I please have a mover and a second? Councillor Roach, Councillor Orban. I put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Item number 8. The meeting is closed now. Council, I now declare the meeting closed at 7:45. And thank you for attending. Could I have the